He is the son of Mary and Joseph, the founder of a prominent religion, and known to millions as the Son of God. Jesus, the most famous man in the world. But more than 2,000 years after his death, many questions remain about his life. Where was he really born? Did he have a love life? And did he orchestrate his own crucifixion? Now, scientists are digging up new evidence, discovering details about how ancient people lived, and analyzing the Bible for clues. A startling new portrait is emerging of the man who changed the Western world. And it may not be what you think. On the night Jesus was born, the Gospels tell of a shining star over Bethlehem, a desperate search for shelter by Mary and Joseph, the newborn Jesus in a manger, and 3 wise men who come to worship. The story is so familiar we assume it comes from the Bible. But how much of what we think we know about the Nativity is true? Believe it or not, the Bible actually says very little.
Many of the details of the Nativity that we think of in Western culture aren't even in the Gospel stories.
Only 2 Gospels tell the Nativity story, Matthew and Luke, and they tell it very differently.
There's a few things that they have in common, such as that it is in Bethlehem and that Jesus is born of a virgin, Mary. But other than that, the details vary substantially.
That's because they were written by different authors who probably didn't even witness the events they describe. In fact, scholars date the writing of Matthew and Luke to about 90 years after the birth of Jesus. Luke's story of the birth begins with Mary and Joseph's journey to Bethlehem to register in a Roman census.
In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered.
Luke's version also gives us the cherished image of Mary on a donkey. But the Gospel of Matthew says that Joseph and Mary already lived in Bethlehem. In Matthew's version, it wasn't Mary and Joseph who traveled. It was the 3 Magi who were guided to Jesus by the Star of Bethlehem.
And there, ahead of them, went the star they had seen in the east.
It's impossible to figure out whose description of the Nativity is right. But Matthew's talk of a star over Bethlehem sheds light on another great unknown: the year Jesus was born. Thanks to modern science, the celestial clock can be turned back 2 millennia. Scientists have mapped out the ancient Judean sky to identify what caught the eyes of the Magi.
We should read the word star as sign. A sign appeared in the sky. So we should look at the sky the same way the Magi did and try to understand what of the many things happening in the sky was the star. If there had been a bright exploding star, the case would be closed. We'd say that was the Christmas star. We don't have to look further. But there were no bright exploding stars at the time that we're interested in.
So what the Magi saw was probably more subtle than an exploding star. But in the year 2 BC, there was a spectacular event of a planetary kind: Jupiter moving in on Venus.
On the evening of June 17th, as the sky grew dark and the stars appeared, the 2 planets had merged into one single gleaming object, one giant star in the sky, in the direction of Jerusalem, as seen from Persia. And that night the Magi would have watched in astonishment as these 2 merged planets slowly set in the west.
Some astronomers suspect that this event could have been the Star of Bethlehem, which would pinpoint the year Jesus was born. Unfortunately, there's no way to know for sure.
You can't pick the most interesting astronomical event and say this was the star, because there are interesting things happening in the sky every year, and so you don't know how to make a choice.
Maybe the Star of Bethlehem was something far more political than a simple star in the sky.
Right after Julius Caesar is assassinated, his adopted son Octavian, who later becomes Augustus, sponsors a series of games inside Rome, and it's at that time that a comet appears in the sky.
Augustus saw the comet as an omen.
Augustus made the claim when a comet flew across the skies in Rome that that was his father, Julius Caesar, that was his soul taking his place amongst the gods. That was his resurrection, or apotheosis. So he put that star on all of his coins.
Emperor Augustus minted coins with Julius Caesar on one side and a star on the other. He even referred to himself as Divi Filius, the divine son. He spread word of his divinity throughout the empire. Evidence still exists in the ruins of Ephesus in modern-day Turkey.
All across the Roman Empire, the message was spread of the supremacy of the emperor, in fact, of the divinity of the emperor. That message was spread on inscriptions such as this one here, which reads, Imperator Caesare Divi Filius Augustus, which means Caesar, the son of God, Augustus. And this is the message that Christians challenged with the message that Jesus is the Son of God.
So the Star of Bethlehem could have been Matthew's answer to Caesar's comet, a celestial sign of Jesus' greatness.
What Matthew's trying to say is that no, this poor, lowly Jewish peasant is in fact the Son of God, not this high and mighty imperial Lord.
The clash between the Romans and Jesus seems to be set from his birth. But was Jesus of Nazareth born in Nazareth or Bethlehem? King David, Israel's most famous king, came from Bethlehem. Maybe the gospel writers just wanted to bolster Jesus' biography.
What are they doing in Bethlehem? Since there was no census as far as we know at that time, then we have to somehow or another explain why it just happens to be that the home of King David, who is, of course, the prototype for the Messiah, should be the place where a family from Nazareth goes to have its baby. This is a very strange thing.
I think it's fair to say that the majority of scholars are very skeptical of Jesus' birth in Bethlehem.
So even though modern analysis of the Gospels suggests some intriguing possibilities, there's no way to say for sure when and where Jesus was born. But there is a clue in the Bible that hints about the setting of Jesus' birth. A very humble one.
She laid him in a manger.
The word manger is derived from the French to eat and means feeding trough. But the Greek word fatne, used in the original text, is a little more ambiguous.
Normally we see it used to translate a stall, a place where animals are kept. The tradition arose that it referred to the actual feeding trough, or the manger, where the child was placed. But in